Okay, welcome. This is the May 8th meeting of the Budget Review Committee, and we've got a full agenda today. I will turn it over to the Finance Director to get us started.
Good afternoon, Mr. Budget Chair. First off, I'd like to start out by letting you know that what we passed out were the responses to the request from Council from the May 1st meeting. Council wanted us to schedule all the departments with new positions or reclassification requests, and I just want to confirm that all of those departments are listed on the schedule. The schedule is the next page in the packet. You also wanted a current copy of the pay scale as well as details for the position changes. That's attached in the packet as attachment A. You also wanted information related to the E911 prepaid wireless refund that was administered by the Department of Revenue. We've included a letter from the Commissioner in the packet explaining that refund. You also requested, Council also requested the FY18 and FY19 breakdown for CDBG funds. That's included in the packet as attachment C. And the capital outlay distribution percentages for OLOS public safety funds, that is included in the packet as attachment D. The thumb drive that we passed out today, the little thumb drive, that contains all the presentations related to the garbage trucks. It was too much to print. It's like over 200 pages. And so we put all of those documents on the thumb drive, and you can take that with you. So the first item on the agenda is the Development Authority. Council requested that the Development Authority attend the budget review session. I do believe I saw Mr. Salido here from the Development Authority, and Mr. Carrick is here as well. So he's presenting today.
I am.
Okay.
I think I've been asked to talk about a couple of things, and I'll be happy to do them whichever whichever item y'all want to talk about first. Pam, I don't know, did you want to talk some about the NCR thing before me? Or how do y'all want to do that? Or we've got a request for an additional budget item that I'll be happy to cover if you want to do that first, and then we can go into the NCR, or we can do it vice versa. That's fine.
Is anything about the NCR at this point would be considered confidential that we could disclose in a...
I don't think so. I think everything's out there.
Okay, good. So. Then that's fine.
You want to go first on that? Okay.
So there were a couple questions related to the NCR, and I wanted to just provide the financial information, and then the Development Authority can talk about the specifics of the contract between the Development Authority and NCR. The city's agreement was an intergovernmental agreement with the Development Authority, and that was done in 2009. A resolution 234-09. Our annual payments at that time for $7,445,000 was $948,000 per year that started in FY11. So we made payments of $948 from FY11 to FY15, and this was to be a 10-year agreement for that line of credit for $7.4 million. The opportunity for Blue Cross Blue Shield came about for an additional 800 jobs, and that was presented in October of 2014. So at that time, the line of credit that we have was refinanced. It had $4.7 million remaining on that line of credit, the Development Authority's line of credit. And the request was to extend the remaining 5 years to 10 years and add in the $2.3 million for the Blue Cross Blue Shield commitment, which then refinanced the annual payment for 10 years to $800,000. So the NCR payment that we make each year is really the repayment on this line of credit that was extended and refinanced really for a 10-year period after the first 5 years of NCR. So when you see that item in the budget related to NCR Blue Cross Blue Shield payment, it is a commitment that was made on that intergovernmental agreement. So I think there were some questions about why are we still paying on NCR if NCR is leaving town, and that's really the reason. Is it's a commitment that was made between the city and the Development Authority. And so we are in year 4 of that 10-year commitment on the refinance of that line of credit.
Sorry, Councilor Thomas.
And I don't know, Ms. Hodge, if this is you or Mr. Carrick or whoever. One of the questions that I have been asked since all this came up was, has NCR fulfilled all of its obligations to us under the contract? And if not, you know, where are we on that side of it?
Sure, I can answer that. The only obligation that they had was an employee, a full-time equivalent employee count number. And I think the number that they had projected was 872 employees. When we do these agreements, we typically follow the same principles that the state of Georgia does in their incentive program. And they, at the time, were saying 70%, you have to meet 70% of your employment projection by a specified date. And I think in this case, it was December the 31st of 2014. And so by that December 31st, 2014, we received a letter from them explaining that they had met 83% of, I believe it was 83%. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, so 83% of their projected employee number. And so that was the only requirement that they had to meet, was hire the right number, hire 70% of the number of people that you said you were going to hire. They proved that they had hired 83% of that number, so they met all the qualifications that they had to meet to avoid any sort of clawbacks on that particular project.
And I do know that there have been a number of comments about clawbacks and that there should be something we are getting back. Are you telling us basically there's not?
That's correct. There is not. They've met the obligations of that agreement in full.
Well, and I do want to, I want to say that I believe that our development authority has done whatever was necessary to make sure that NCR did what they were obligated to do or whatever. This is not something that those people who have said to me, well, why didn't the development authority do something? Well, I'm not sure there was anything the development authority could have done in that situation, and I believe that, you know, you guys have done what needed to be done in the manner that it should have been done. It's too bad that NCR decided to change their plan.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Russ, what about property tax incentives? That typically run, were those combined into this too? Any type of property tax abatement?
There were property tax incentives in the project agreement, yes.
Is there a timeline they had to meet to be able to receive all of those, or any of those?
Well,
recapture?
They extended to some degree out, I think, 20 years, if I remember correctly. And again, y'all feel free to correct me.
Like 20 years on the real property, was a shorter duration on the personal property.
So obviously, you know, they'll meet that, they'll get those incentives as long as they're here. I mean, they applied
Right.
year to year. And so as long as they're here, they get those incentives. There's not any sort of provision for those having to be, you know, they could be cut off, I guess is how.
Now, that facility they're in, was that completely a lease agreement? Because if I'm not mistaken, we had to advance rehab funds for the facility, as I recall. Part of the deal, you know, was to rehab that facility for them.
That was part of the incentives where we did some.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, I mean,
what's your question there?
Yeah, what was the lease term?
The lease terms are, they in theory, and again, we might have to get Rob McKenna up here to explain the bond process, but they essentially own the buildings. We as the development authority officially, legally own it. They lease it back.
Right.
In this case, their bank is the bondholder, and they're paying for that, and they're still obligated to continue to pay those bonds as anybody else with a mortgage would.
Right. But if they had a long-term lease with us and left out early, there are always provisions for continuing the lease payments.
I'm not sure I understand. They certainly have to continue their lease payments, or they'll be in default of their bonds, their bond indebtedness.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm answering your
That,
question.
you did.
Okay.
You did.
They're still, but that is with their bank, who owns
right.
the bonds, yeah.
Right. I got you. Okay, I think that's it. Rob, do you want to add something?
He said he might have to get me up here, so I thought I'd step up just in
Yeah.
case.
We just,
If anybody has any questions, then I'll be happy.
yeah. I mean, we're just getting a lot of calls, a lot of concern.
Sure,
There's
sure,
a lot of money,
absolutely.
a lot of money in play, a lot of money advanced, and to lose out on that and now have a request for a different, a payroll position.
Sure. I fully understand.
It brings us to a
We've
lot
got
of
the same
scrutiny.
sentiment. And, we obviously would love to have had a different outcome.
Right.
But,
Okay.
that is the nature of this game a little bit. And I say this game, this business is probably a better word. If we want to be in this game of trying to draw people to Columbus, sadly enough, it's a very competitive business.
Well, it was. I mean, I was there when we set it up. I remember.
I'm just saying, I agree with you totally. I wish it were a little bit different, but it is the nature of the beast a little bit.
But I think my last question would be, when they hit the peak employment number, that was not required to be sustained for any length of time?
No, it had to be met.
It's just a fixed number, they had a fixed target.
That gets into the pretty lengthy project agreement. I would hesitate to say, was there a required maintenance of that over a period of time? I don't know if, I'd be happy to get you a copy of the project agreement, and we could dig into it and get back with you with an answer on that.
All right. But as far as you know, they just had to hit that peak target.
That's typically, we have to certify it, by a certain date that they're there. And,
Okay.
if there's a maintenance over a longer period of time, I couldn't answer that question in that particular project agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. But I will get back to you on it. Okay.
And you can go ahead with the current request, I guess.
Yeah, the other request, if y'all remember, when General Wesley was at Fort Benning, he was really involved in a lot of what is becoming the Futures Command of the Army. And what we have a real opportunity to do, and what he was encouraging us to do, was look at ways that we could take advantage of the robotics issues that are surrounding Fort Benning. And that Futures Command has several cross-functional teams, two of which are housed at Fort Benning, that being soldier lethality, and the other one is the autonomous vehicle.
Russ, I apologize. Before we get off on that, Councilor Davis had a follow-up, I believe.
Sure.
I apologize, Mr. Character. I didn't know you were going to jump right into it. I thought your attorney or somebody else was going to continue to speak. Just a couple of questions on the 872. You mentioned the agreement dealt with 872 full-time.
Correct.
Employees. Okay. And you said you'll get us a copy of that agreement, right?
Sure.
And it is public information.
In fact, we
Okay.
can leave one with you today if somebody.
Okay, that would be good. And so right now, they're really on their own schedule. Is that what I hear you saying?
Meaning NCR on their own schedule?
Right, they can leave, they can do whatever they want to at this point, right?
Yes, yes.
So they can choose to stay if they want to, or meet all their other obligations, but they're really, it's subjective to the company decisions, I would think. Right.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and that was you said it was a 5 or a 10-year agreement?
A 5-year or 10-year agreement.
Right.
The original.
The contract.
You talking about?
Contract between the Development Authority city, they
had a timeline of meeting their employee numbers, I think, within something very close to 5 years, yes.
That's 5 years, but the deal.
I think it was actually
the
December
agreement
31st,
was-
2014. So I'm
agreement
not
was
sure
for
when the
5 or-
project agreement was signed.
5 or 10-year agreement?
Yeah, it's 5.
5
Here it
years.
is, I got the date. May 22nd was when the project agreement was signed, so it was whatever the time is from May 22nd, 2009 to December 31st, 2014.
Okay,
Approximately 5 years.
okay. I got it. I got my
Okay.
notes. Thanks.
So back to what our request is, we're asking for $150,000 to fund in part a position, but also the activities of that person around this whole opportunity of establishing a robotics center of innovation in Columbus. And what we think we have a unique opportunity to do some things differently in the development authority as opposed to things like this NCR deal, which is what I call the well hunting expedition, where you're going out and trying to bring people here. This is an opportunity to grow an industry, much like we're trying to do in the film industry, but we're trying to do it around robotics and around what Fort Benning has got going on and the military has got going on around the Futures Command. We think we have a really unique opportunity, but it's not easy to go out and establish something like that. We think we need somebody dedicated to that function, and we need to provide them with some funds to do the things, the activities around the marketing of that opportunity. So, you know, the obvious question is we've got some money in our account, if you want to call it that. We've got $1.5 million that is being paid out over incentives over the next few months, so we'll be down to about $1.5 million. And one of the things I would bring out is we write these proposals for bringing people to Columbus, you know, 4 or 5 a month. So at any one point, those things may go 60, 90 days. So we may have 10 to 15 proposals out with various levels of incentive commitments on them. And they may range from $50,000 to $500,000. And so I wish they would all come to us. We know they're not. It's a very competitive business. But if we get down into, you know, $1 million essentially in a war chest, we're going to be very limited in how much we can comfortably propose for these routine proposals that we're getting, that we're being asked to make bids for. And so that was the reason that we said, hey, let's go and see if there's, in that other economic development money that the council maintains, does it make sense to make an investment in this robotics venture? We think it's a solid thing that we need to do. You know, there's no guarantees on it, certainly, and that's why we said let's look at it for the next 3 years. And that's the reason for requesting the money out of the other fund as opposed to what we've got sitting in the war chest, if you will. We think we need that there, or else we're going to be coming routinely every time we're doing a proposal saying, hey, if we happen to get this, will y'all help us find the money to do it? And typically we get 24 to 48 hours to put a proposal together and get it back to the client that's interested in looking at Columbus. So.
Councilor Davis asked, would you give a brief rundown of the proposal?
Yeah, it's $150,000 a year for 3 years, essentially for the hiring of one person that would work on the chamber staff as part of the Development Authority's contract with the chamber, who would be focused solely on the robotics, development. And that is one person and $50,000 for attending and showing at a couple of trade shows and developing and distributing some marketing materials that we would go toward defense contractors and robotics vendors, with the hope being that we would bring some of those people to Columbus within 3 years.
So that's $150,000 for 3 years.
$150,000 a year for 3 years.
For 3 years.
Yeah.
Ms. Pugh? No, I'm sorry.
Oh. I personally think it would be better if you come back to us when you need the $150,000. I said it because if we issue out to you $150,000 a year, that reduces the amount of our fund balance. That affects our days in reserve. And I would much rather come up with the $150,000 in March than taking it out in July.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm bad of hearing. I missed the very first part of that.
Madam Pro Tem, the monies for the robotics initiative is in the Economic Development Fund, which does not impact the general fund. So there's a millage that we collect for economic development activities, and this is, the $150,000 would come out of that fund. It has no bearing on the general fund or reserves.
But now they're receiving how much a year for economic development?
In the budget for FY19, we are, I believe it's a little bit more than $2 million that is distributed between the city and the Development Authority. So their portion of that, I'm looking it up, sorry.
It's right at 1.2.
It's $1.2 million that they receive from tax monies.
And you're averaging what percentage of spending that 1.2 million a year?
I'm sorry.
You're averaging what percentage of spending that 1.2 million a year?
It depends solely on what we do typically with incentives. Our basic costs are, we have a $300,000 contract with the chamber to provide all of our day-to-day work, which includes both Brian Salito's work as a project manager, part of Brian Anderson's as an oversight role, an administrative person, some Fort Benning relations work, and our workforce development efforts. So then we pay, also out of that, we pay the Valley Partnership Joint Development Authority dues, which are about $200,000 a year. So that's $500, roughly half of the budget. The other goes into the war chest that we talked about earlier, that is used to pay and incent people to grow their business either through moving here or expanding their current operations. As well as doing things, a little bit of things like developing some properties and stuff out at Muskogee Technology Park.
Okay. Councilor Thomas?
Russ, this has been presented to us as a city employee. Is that correct? That this person would be an employee of the city?
I've not heard that, Ms. Thomas. I have not heard that it would be. I have the assumption personally that it would be a chamber employee.
And can you tell me why we would have an employee rather than a consultant? If we had a consultant for 3 years, at the end of the 3 years, our obligation would be over and done to that person. If we have an employee, there may be some residual employment requirements at the end of the 3 years.
We could look at that. My gut feel is a contractor would be more expensive. That would be my personal guess. I haven't looked at that, but we can certainly look at it. But I would think getting out of an employee, if the job goes away after 3 years, is cheaper. Certainly a contractor is going to be more expensive, you know, to come in and do it, I would think. Now, it obviously depends on who you contract with, but I would guess a person of equal talent and skill and experience would be more expensive as a contractor than they would be as an employee.
And the other question that I have been asked is, well, why don't they pay this out of the $250,000 we already give them? Why do they need an additional $150,000?
For the same reason that I was talking about earlier, that war chest, that if we try to operate with a war chest that's down in the $1 million range, and we're issuing proposals routinely to people that the state brings to us and says, hey, these people are interested in looking at Columbus, so we have to put proposals out there before they ever set foot in Columbus.
Sure.
And so at any one time, we've got 15 to 20 proposals sitting out there with some level of incentive committed to should they decide to come to Columbus. If we're trying to do that and we've got $500,000 or $1 million in our, I keep using the term war chest, but in our account, then that's going to make it very difficult for us to confidently issue, you know, more proposals, knowing that if one or two of them hits, and we've got to be in here saying, hey guys, we don't have any money, and we've made these commitments, you know, via these proposals. Either we got to back out of the proposed commitment, or we got to come to y'all and say, hey, now we need some money, and you know, it just slows down the whole process. And this process, whether we like it or not, it moves very quickly sometimes.
It either does not move at all.
Or it doesn't move at all.
Very, very quickly. Yeah, I understand that. Ms. Alexander, as I understand part of your response to the Mayor Pro Tem, this money is in a separate account that cannot be used to pay for expenses that typically are covered in the general fund.
That's correct.
So that this is not money that we're taking out of some general fund account and giving to the Development Authority.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Allen?
Thanks, sir. Angela, I left my handout that you had last meeting in the office. But if I recall, help me through this, if I recall, in that handout, we talked about the value of a mill being a little over 5 million, 5.2 or something like that, 5.4, somewhere in that range. And I thought in your handout it talked about our contribution to the Development Authority was $500,000.
It's 0.25 mils.
But it is $0.25 mil.
It's $0.25 mil, yes, sir. So the remaining 0.25 of the mills, well, they're just, so for the Economic Development Fund, we collect 0.50 mils, which for the FY19 budget is valued at $2.4 million. Out of the 0.50 mils, the Development Authority receives 0.25 mils, which is valued at about $1.2 million. The remaining 2.25 mils is distributed for the NCR Blue Cross Blue Shield payment, which is valued at $800,000. Included in the FY19 budget, there is $150,000 for the robotics initiative, and the amount of the millage from FY19 that we are putting up for reserves is valued at $266,472. So the millage is split. It's 0.25 mils that goes to the Development Authority and 0.25 mils that goes to the city. Out of our 0.25 mils, we've already obligated $800 for the NCR Blue Cross Blue Shield deal. They're asking in this budget an additional $150,000 for the robotics initiative, which leaves reserve monies that we're putting up from FY19 of $266,000. But that's just from 19. We have existing reserves. The city has existing reserves that we've collected over the years.
Okay. Mr. Carricker, I guess I was thinking along the lines of Councilor Thomas. Why would we, once you hire an employee, there are a lot of things that go along with that, a lot of mandates that you have to provide, sick time, vacation, you know, all that. So it seems like this could cost a lot more if you hire. Contracting someone would, it may seem to cost more, but up front, but it seems to me you get out of a lot of requirements doing it that way. Do you have somebody in mind already?
No, do not.
So,
you know, it's something we'll certainly take a look at. I mean, you know, that.
I mean, we can have a talk offline. I
Sure.
don't want to put you on the spot here with something that you weren't prepared for this type of question, but it does lend me to believe that there might be a better way to get at this.
Well, I would hope that it turns into a permanent deal, you know, that we would then somehow be generating enough revenue to pick it up after 3 years so that we would want to keep somebody permanent. Now, if it doesn't, obviously, that's what we're talking about, is if it doesn't work, what do you do at the end of 3 years? We can certainly take a look, and it may be that the best person is out there only available as a contractor. And if that's the case, we'd certainly want to go that route. But, you know, typically if you're hiring, if you're getting somebody full-time and you're expecting them to work 60 hours a week for 40 hours of pay, it's, you know, my experience is it's better to have them on your payroll, but that's just my personal opinion. So, but we can certainly take a look at it. And again, depending on who we find out there, it may dictate which way we ought to go with it.
Well, in my layman's mind, I'm thinking that person's not in Columbus today, that once you find them, they're either going to work from home and go where you need them to go, or they're going to have to move here. And if they're going to move here on a 3-year contract, then I question their sanity.
Right.
So anyway, we got time to talk about it. So thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Davis.
Mr. Character, look, I'm open to discuss the matter too. Right now, I just have to tell you, I'm not really comfortable with it. I mean, I can be persuaded, but I'm not really comfortable, and I'll give you my reasons behind it. I do think that in just listening to this discussion, based on what we're saying, based on what was said, you know, it looks to me just like off the top that the city could basically do this function and do it for far less. So I have to ask that as a question. The second one would be, we had well, let's just talk about the goal of this fund that we have. Actually, I'm one of the ones that really push for that. The purpose, and let me remind you, the purpose of that fund is to create jobs, is to bring jobs in and give those incentives for that. It's not a fund in my mind that is subjective, where we're going out on a fishing expedition trying to find people. This is for money that we would take, that we have people who have committed, and we would take it because we are now having a return on the investment. Mr. Jones came in earlier and talked to us about some of these initiatives. One of the questions I would have to say, there's a lot of players in this field, whether it's the university systems, whether it's the corporate systems, whether it's the DOD. I mean, a lot of this stuff is happening right now. There's a lot of players in this, and you know, and I would have to, even from a standpoint of the foundations, I would have to ask that question, you know, is this competition thing, you know, what is so valuable about this one entity versus what all these other entities can do collectively? I would have to ask that question. I need to get comfortable with that. The last thing is, I think the answer, you just gave us the answer a little while ago, that the funds that you already have that's there to be utilized to bring people in and provide incentives, I would say use that, because that's exactly the purpose behind it. And go find the jobs. I would rather you come to us and ask us for that money, and therefore I could look back at the taxpayers and say, hey, we've got some jobs coming our way. We need to give them some money. I would rather be in that position rather than be in a position of solidity versus a position of subjectiveness. So those would be my concerns about this request, and I'm just having this conversation with you, being up front, putting it out there.
Sure.
That would be something that I would need to get really, really comfortable with. And I can't say I am at this point, because this is really the first conversation that we've had on this subject. I do thank you for coming today and talking to us, and there's probably, you probably have some more to say, so I'm eager to listen.
Okay. Well, listen, I certainly respect your thoughts on that, and you know, the whole, it does make it a little bit more difficult for us to operate effectively, I think, as a development authority, if we never know for sure that we've got to come get permission after the fact when we've sold something to a customer, so to speak. And then we got to go say, okay, well, now can I deliver it? That puts us in a little bit of a tough spot. You know, certainly.
Are you saying with this body?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we got to come back, if we go out and make a proposal to somebody to move their business to Columbus, we got to make that proposal, and they say, okay, well, we're coming. And then we got to say, okay, well, all right, let us go back to council and see if we can get the money. So that's, I'm just answering that one piece of your discussion.
And maybe, I mean, maybe in the mindset of the development authority, that may be, I don't see that being a problem with this body. I really don't. You know, we've already got examples of where we can, this body can act. I mean, we can act within a week. We meet every 2 weeks. It's just a matter of us knowing about it and working through it. I think we've met every request outside of one in the last, 10 years from the Development Authority requests, and we've been pretty much on time.
Okay.
Councilor Thomas?
I'll tell you, Russ, if this happens and you guys get somebody to come and you need money from this group, I'll come to a call meeting You don't have to wait till 2 weeks from next Tuesday. I'll come to a call meeting. I do want to say that I think, though, that this robotics initiative, is something that is very important to our community. And we have people who are working very diligently now to do this. I know, for example, General Pete Jones at the Infantry Museum is working to try to get what we need here in Columbus. And I don't want to do anything that will stymie that effort, because I think that if we can get some of these robotics here, it will be a tremendous boost for our community. I'm wondering if, and I don't want to be nitpicky about whether this person is an employee or a consultant. I want the best person in the best position to do the best for Columbus that we can get.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so whatever that is, that you and the Development Authority and your expertise, I'm depending on that to tell me which way to go on that. I'm wondering if, Mr. Chair, maybe the 150,000, you know, that we could somehow or another deal with that and not dictate whether or not it's an employee or a consultant, or 100 of it is for salary and 50 is for expenses or whatever. But I don't want to do anything that's going to stop the momentum of the Development Authority as it deals with the robotics. And it may be that we may want to do it a year at a time, you know, instead of a 3-year commitment. I don't know. I think a 3-year commitment, you know, that's $450,000.
I mean, those are all good points. You also have to look at to what can you commit a future council to.
Right.
And then if you get into a payroll situation and maybe it doesn't work out, but then you say, well, we had a 3-year contract with this person, so we're going to have to work out something with that. You know, that's not the situation we want to be in.
Sure, yeah. But I wouldn't see, I don't think there'll be a 3-year contract unless we do a contract employee. If we hire somebody, we're hiring them into a full-time position with, you know, and if they don't perform, just like anybody else, they'll be fired, or if the job goes away, they'll be let go, and you got to deal with that. But, you know, I fully understand what you're saying about unable to commit future councils.
We've got some other comments, but my own understanding was when the mayor put that second $250,000 in the budget a few years ago, my understanding that it was reserved for incentive funds like you talked about the war chest, and not so much as payroll or payroll type funding, but it was war chest type funding.
And that may well be. I've never heard that, but it may well be.
That was just my feeling and my understanding. And maybe we didn't have that detailed discussion about it, but that was my understanding. But I'm still not saying that we can't work this out, because I think we all want to see it succeed. So it's not that we're opposed to what you're bringing forward. It's just how do we go about working together to accomplish it.
I fully understand that.
And that can be an aggravating process.
I wouldn't want to sit in y'all's position and
have to
decide, so I can fully appreciate y'all's concerns.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem?
One of the things I feel like this robotics is going to do is going to take off, because when right before General Wesley left, I know he's still working on it. And this is his thing, and he wants to see Fort Benning succeed with it. But I recall discussion on the mill that was going to the Chamber for Economic Development. It wasn't for personnel, it was for all the incentives and stuff you all needed. But I'm kind of like Councilor Thomas. I don't want to tell you how to use it. But if we're going to start hiring employees, then it's going to be gone.
The way I would look at this is asking for basically a 3-year grant for us to get this off the ground. We're going to use some of that money to do marketing with. We're going to use some of it to hire someone in the chamber, or, as you've mentioned, contract with somebody to work with the chamber. And we're going to do some outright going to trade shows and doing those sorts of things. So it's a request for a 3-year grant. If at the end of 3 years, I don't think we'll be back in here asking you to continue fund it. It'll either fund itself or it'll go away. That's my perception. So it's not asking you to hire an employee so much and put somebody on the city payroll. It's asking you to fund a 3-year grant to initiate what I think is a very timely initiative. As you've mentioned, General Jones, all those guys, what stuff CSU's got going on, there's a lot of momentum around the robotics. We think it's just an opportune time to put somebody in to sort of coordinate all the activities around all those institutions. And right now, General Jones, as much as he's involved with it, he's got other jobs. And so, you know, if he could do it, we'd probably try to hire him, but he's probably got too many other things going on. But again, I think it's just the timing of it, and see it as a grant. We're going to spend that grant for 3 years, and then we're going to either fund it ourselves through their success, or we'll do away with it.
Are employees funded out of the money that you get now?
I'm sorry?
Are employees funded out of the money, the meal that you get now?
Well, we have a contract with the chamber to staff the development authority. So Brian Salito, ultimately, you know, if your arm's long enough and you can see around the corners, Brian Salito is funded out of that. The administrative person at the chamber, one administrative person is paid for out of that. Part of Gary Jones, part of Brian Anderson. There's all of the HR work development for workforce development is funded out of that.
Has this always been the case?
Always been the case since I've been around. Since I started fooling around at the chamber in 2000, probably. It's always been the case. The Development Authority has had, for as long as I am aware, it's always had a contract with the chamber to do their work. Somebody's got to get up every morning and think about Development Authority work. And the volunteers aren't doing that, so we've got to have a staff to do that.
Put the administration something like this. I want to hear from the administration.
Mr. Chairman and Mayor Pro Tem, obviously the administration supports this request of $150,000 over 3 years. Let me just say that, of course, you heard from Senior VP Gary Jones this morning. Obviously, the state of Georgia is supporting robotics. Obviously, Fort Benning, and you've heard from Fort Benning, many of you were at the reception when the Commanding General Wesley spoke, is all in on robotics. You heard from the president of CSU, and he is all in on robotics. And when you look at Fort Benning and CSU, the missing piece is the city of Columbus. And I think I was reading in the GMA newsline that they send out from various cities. I believe it was Augusta. They're all in because they got a military base on robotics, because they understand that if they don't get in on the game right now, Augusta could be left out. And from the administration standpoint, we can't afford not to do this. There's too much at stake for the future of robotics in Georgia and across the country. We got to get in on it now, in our opinion. And so, you know, we support the $150,000, obviously, and we support the $150,000 going to the Development Authority, and then as a grant, and then they decide whether it's best to hire an employee or consultants. Consultants concern me when you get in on something like this, because I get to work with them in my capacity as city manager every day. And staff will tell you that I am challenging them and the use of consultants every day, because I can't stand it when you hire a consultant and you make an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes phone call to an out-of-town consultant who has put someone on the ground, and they start the clock when they pick up the phone. As Russ Carricker has said, with an employee, you pay them what you're going to pay them, and you can get 60, 75 hours out of them if you need to get that out of them, and their salary does not change. But you go beyond the contracted hours with a consultant, and there's a cost for, on the 15-minute basis, quarter of an hour basis, when they're dealing with you. So I say all that to say that we support this request. It's in the budget. It's funded in the budget in the second 0.25 meals, as has been laid out by the finance director, and the administration strongly encourages you to we strongly encourage you to support the $150,000 going to the chamber for this purpose.
Councilor Garrett.
Mr. Budget Chairman, I know that the Development Authority has some restricted funds, but if this money is coming from our budget, would we have the, I guess it would be a wash if we were to say, we're going to go ahead and put $150,000 in our general fund reserve, and we're planning on saving that, because if they have to use their funding, we're going to help finance a project, then we've already got that money available and in savings.
Well, in essence, finance director, in essence, it already is that way. I mean, in the Economic Development Reserve Fund, it is reserved in essence for that purpose already. I don't think we would move it to the other fund, to the general fund. I think you would leave it where it is, and you could say it's restricted for that purpose if they bring something back. But I'll let the finance director.
You're correct. It is not in the general fund. We would not move it to the general fund. It has nothing to do with the general fund. If you do not allow the $150,000 payment to the Development Authority, we would just add it to our contingency money that we set aside in that for the city's use. Right now, in that reserve fund that we've collected over the years, is a little bit more than, I think it's about 1.8 million that we have in reserves already. So we would just be adding to the budgeted reserves for FY19 if we don't give the $150,000 to them.
And I wanted to go back just a second to the way that Russ Carricker indicated that the use of the first 0.25 and where they fund the chamber to pay certain employees and other employees get a portion of their pay paid out of that. And when he explained that, it's no different than what we do or any organization will do as it relates to cost allocation. You know, for example, the city manager, every department in the city government, we have cost allocation, right? Yes. And other departments pay into this cost allocation because it has to fund all of the different functions that they have access to in the government, personnel, finance, and so forth, so on. And so what they do in that regard is no different than what we do or any organization would do when you've got leadership from the top and you've got all of your IT and your HR and finance and everybody else. There's a pro rata share of cost that comes from that department to fund all of those areas that they have access to. And so it's no different.
Well, I would just say, I mean, I know this is something we need to do. I know we need to do the robotics initiative. I honestly, I'm more in favor of what we're talking about as far as giving the money if we know it's needed, but if this is the only way that we can get that locked in, I mean, I think this is an investment we need to make.
Councilor Allen?
Thank you, Chair. Clarify again where the 150 is coming from.
So out of the .25 mills that the city receives,
Out of the what?
out of the .25 mills that we receive, that, out of the .25 mills that we receive as the city, because the Development Authority receives .25 mills, we receive .25 mills. So out of our $1.2 million, we have $800,000 that's going to NCR Blue Cross for that payment. We have a contingency that we're setting aside, reserve money that we're setting aside. This year, it's at $266,000. And the $150,000 is coming out of what we set aside for reserves. So our reserve money would increase by $150,000 if we did not pay that money over to the Development Authority.
Okay, I'm good with it, thanks.
Councilor Thomas?
One more question, Ms. Alexander. I'm looking at this sheet of paper right here, okay?
Yes, sir.
This is the Economic Development Authority Fund. And it says that in the operating portion of that fund is $2,432,945. And then down at the bottom, it separates out what is included in that. Mm-hmm. And as I understand what you just said, half of that is given to the Development Authority. Mm-hmm. The other half of that is kept in a city fund, mm-hmm. if you will. Mm-hmm. And in that city fund or in that Development Authority fund is $150,000?
In the city fund is the $150,000 that we would give to the
And so what we are being asked to do mm-hmm. is to move $150,000 from the city's fund mm-hmm. to the Development Authority's fund. Mm-hmm. We're not being asked to increase the overall fund. We're just being asked to shift money from one part of the ledger to another part of the ledger.
Yes.
And then once it gets to the Development Authority, they can make the decision. We can say to you, this $150,000 is to be used for the robotics initiative. Go forth and use it. And you can decide then whether to hire an employee of the Development Authority, not of the city, of the Development Authority, or a consultant, or whatever else, as long as you are spending it for this robotics initiative. Is all that right?
That's correct.
That's the way I understand.
Then I'm not sure why we're so wrapped around this post. Okay. Russ, it's been great seeing you today, sir.
I appreciate being seen. Thank you.
Better to be seen than viewed, I've been told.
Councilor Davis?
Russ, let me remind you, Mr. Jones came in early and spoke and talked about the robotics initiative. And I just want to get this. You're asking for the $150,000, but are you prepared to present us with a budget?
Sure.
Can you do that before we get out of our session? Present us with a budget so what this $150 will be used for?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you verbally.
There's been a lot of things said today that I'm unsure. I'm just.
In round numbers, Glenn, it's 3 items. There's a salary, which we are projecting to be about $100,000. There's $25,000 to attend 2 trade shows where the robotics and the military industry operate. That is USAA and National Defense Industry. Those two are 2 very large trade shows where every robotics defense contractor will be at. And then there's $25,000 for the general marketing and program development that we'll have to put together to be able to go attend a trade show and look like we know what we're doing.
Well, it's obvious that you've got some ideas of the use of the funds, but if you would narrow that down in exactly how you came up with that 150 and why that's the significant number, and then a budget showing exactly what the money's going to be earmarked for.
Sure.
That would be greatly appreciated.
Sure.
And
you know, 100,000 for a salary, that's a stretch. 50 for a conference or a few conferences.
We're talking about hiring somebody who's probably MBA quality, you know, MBA type of educational background in technical fields. 100,000 doesn't go very far in that world. You know,
well,
I wish it did, but.
And I hear you, but we have to look at this whole government when it comes to salaries.
I agree.
We don't have many at that level. And we've got some MBAs and some masters as well. So I would like to see that information. If you could put that budget together, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, I was going to say behind your Exhibit 2, if you will look there, page 39, behind Exhibit 2, at the bottom of the page, there's a letter from Russ Carricker to the mayor. And at the bottom, the last paragraph, where they request $150,000 annually for the next 3 years. In bullet point 1, they want to hire an economic development project manager, $100,000 salary with benefits. So the $100,000 would be salary with benefits. And on page 40, on the back of that page, it shows the second bullet, $25,000 to develop and implement a targeted recruitment and marketing campaign aimed at selling targeted defense contractors on Columbus, $25,000. And then the last bullet, $25,000 for travel and marketing participation at 2 to 3 military trade shows annually, partnering with the Association of the United States Army and the National Defense Industry Association. And so that's how they propose the $150,000 would be spent. But if you want a more detailed budget, I'm sure.
I appreciate you. I think I said USAA a while ago. I'd probably get shot outside if I said the wrong.
And so if you want something more than that, but I just wanted to call to your attention, it's in that letter behind Exhibit 2.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor Thomas, just real briefly, when you said why are we getting wrapped around the axle, which we tend to do quite often. My questions were, number one, just because we'd had so many questions about the NCR deal, was there any way of recouping any funding from that to supplement this? And then the other is to clarify, just among the councilors, that it is a 3-year commitment. It will be used to potentially fund a payroll position, so you don't get caught when somebody else finds out. What do you mean it went to be payroll and not incentive on a deal? Just so we all understand and can answer to the citizens as to what we're using the money for.
Well, and recognizing too that last week was the first we ever heard of this. You know, and we didn't have a lot of additional information about it. So that was one of the.
Understand.
Yeah, this is just the process that we have to go through.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Proud y'all do it.
All right. Any other questions for the Development Authority? Thank you.
Thank you
for your time and patience. Appreciate it.
I think we've got a copy of, Glenn, that NCR project agreement. I can leave that with, I got one copy. I think if y'all want me to leave that with somebody, y'all can disperse it as you need to.
Madam Director.
So next presentation on the agenda is from the Tax Assessor's Office. I believe we have Ms. Betty Middleton and John Williams here. He has a presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of council, Mayor Pro Tem, City Attorney, City Manager. Good to see you all again. I hope you had a good lunch. I'm here today to talk to you about our request for additional personnel. You all have seen me many times over the last couple of years, and we've talked about our department and what's gone right, most of the times what's gone wrong, what can we do to fix it, how did this happen. And I'm here today to just point you in one direction, and that direction is understaffing. State mandates, as many of you all remember from some of the presentations, the state mandates, 485299, I believe, that we review every property every 3 years. All the properties in the county get reviewed every 3 years. In the past, we haven't had the personnel to do that. Our board of assessors has also required us to not only look at all the properties in the county, the code states review the properties in the county every 3 years. Our board has gone one step further and said you will physically inspect all the properties in the county, both taxable and non-taxable, every 3 years. So that's a little bit different than the ambiguous word review that's in the Georgia Code. And one of the ways that we've felt like we've done our best is that we can review a property sitting at a desk. We can review the information for the property, looking at photographs and looking at our property record cards. But now our Board of Assessors says, no, we want you to physically inspect the property every 3 years, not just taxable property, but all property. So 72,000 parcels in this county, and that's a rounded number, we will use or review every 3 years. When you look at those numbers, I've talked about the IAAO, International Association of Assessing Officials. They're the entity here, not only in America, but internationally, as the name would suggest. They set the standards for what governments do. They're the ones that offer the highest level of education for assessing officials and appraising officials that work in local city governments. They recommend one appraiser do 3,000 to 3,500 parcels. So every 3,500 parcels, you should have one appraiser. That equates to 21 real property appraisers for 72,000 real property parcels. So their standard is 21. We have 8. Now that number 8 does not include the 2 managers and the 2 mappers that are in the residential and commercial division. Technically speaking, that manager is an appraiser, and technically speaking, that mapper is an appraiser, but those 2 persons do not go out and do physical inspections of property. It'd be rare that a mapper would go out to the field, or that it's not so rare for a manager, but my board directed me to take the manager and the mapper out of this equation and just use the number 8, because that's the number of staff members, appraisers, that are actually doing these inspections. Pointed this out a couple times. The 2008 audit 10 years ago identified insufficient staffing in the residential division. The external audit from 2013 indicated understaffing in the residential division. So for 10 years at a minimum, for 10 years, people have been telling us that the residential division is understaffed, and we are. we must have additional appraisers to do the job that Georgia code requires us to do, and that's appraise all the property and inspect them every 3 years. This last slide just shows you the three things. You have CCG, you have our pure average, which is Bibb, Henry, and Richmond counties. They are our loosely considered peer counties to us. And then the IAAO standard. You can see in that first column, we have 8 appraisers, our peers have 18, and the IAAO standard is 21. Parcels per day per appraiser, with the 8 appraisers we have, we'd have to look at 33 parcels a day, 270 days a year, to look at 72,000 parcels every 3 years. Our peer counties are looking at about 18 parcels a day. And again, the IAAO standard is 13. So the last one, the shortage per day per appraiser, is the difference between the IAAO standard of 13 and what we or our peer counties do. That leaves us short 20 parcels a day with the staff that we currently have to review all the properties in the county every 3 years. I don't have another slide. I don't have numbers to tell you. I can pull up the budget numbers. You all have them. I have them. This equates to about $187,000 in salaries and benefits for people.
Are these positions in the budget as recommended?
No. As requested. The mayor, her budget did not include these 4 appraisers.
Okay. Well, here's a concern, not necessarily the concern, but a concern is that we're at 63 days and there's no revenue source to fund these positions. You know, fund balance, the worst thing you can do to a fund balance is during an add delete session is add payroll to it because there's no source for it. So that's the position we're in. Payroll is really one of the, it's not a fiscally responsible way to approach the fund balance through the add delete session. That's the position, especially at 63 days, that's the position we're in. I know I sound like a broken record. I don't think I've ever approved a payroll position out of fund balance during add delete because there's no funding source for it. There's no revenue source to pay for it. But I'll entertain any questions or comments from council.
Yes, ma'am. The disparity between what IAAO says we should have and what we have, depending on which numbers you look at, we really could use 8. I knew 8 wasn't going to happen, so I put 4 in the request. 187,551, and that's salary plus benefits. Councilor Baker, I hear you, sir. I hear what you're saying. I just wanted it, I would be...
Oh, you're just doing your job. I understand.
I'd be remiss to not come up here and say, we can't do our job without more people.
I understand.
And I'm not the only department in the city that's probably telling you that.
You're exactly right. But we'll hear a lot of the same needs. We will. Councilor Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to put these 4 on the add list just so we don't lose sight of them. I don't know that at the end of the day, Mr. Williams, we're going to be able to do 4. But I want to put them on the list just so that we can continue to keep this in our mind.
So that's, Councilor Thomas, that's 4 G14 appraiser positions valued with benefits at $187,843. And the tax assessor's office did have 1 position that was included in the recommended budget. It is for a G14 GIS technician. So they can speak on the need for that particular position because they would be part of that group that council wanted to see for new positions and reclassifications as well.
Okay. You may recall my prior presentation about this position last year. And Director Tolley was up here talking about the position that had come from IT and had gone to the assessor's office, but IT was still funding the position. You may recall that GIS position had been put out to us but not funded for us. So we asked for it last year. It was not approved. The IT department continued to fund it for last fiscal year, and now again we asked for it this year and received the position in our budget. Interestingly enough, we did not receive the request for the education that's required to maintain that person's proficiency in her position. So, you know, I'm here talking about bigger things, but that's one of those things that was not funded. So we'll have to figure out a way, like everybody else, to try to get funds to do things that are necessary even though you don't have them. There was something else, Angelica, and you may direct me as to when to talk about the copier cost. That one, you probably recall the number 11,000. That was the number of appeals that we processed last year, 11,008. Our multifunction copier machine went on the blink in the middle of that process last year. And it does everything, as you would imagine, for our department. We have one. And it stopped. And so Jeremy and some of his crew came down and looked at it, and Jeremy pulled me aside. He said, "You realize this is one of two of the oldest pieces of equipment like this in the city?" I said, "No, I didn't know that." He said, we're going to try to do this and see if it works. If it doesn't, it needs parts. I'm not sure how we're going to do that." So that's when I started asking, when is it going to end lease? When is the end of the lease agreement? And what can we do? How is this done? I don't know. Found out that there was we used a company that the rest of the city's no longer using. It's using a RICO product now, and so we contacted the provider and got him to come out and look at what we had and what the equivalent would be and got a price for that. And we said, well, that price per page is even less than what we're paying. That's a win-win. It's not going to cost us anything extra to get a new piece of equipment. Then I was told very recently, it's probably my fault, I was probably told before, didn't hear it, the monthly lease payment also comes out of my budget. And so I did not add that to my budget request when it was submitted. And that is, I believe, $2,250 for the monthly lease payment for that machine. The cost per color page and cost per black and white are at or slightly below the historic costs I've been paying for several years. So that will probably end up saving me some money, but we do have to have that machine. And my concern is we're going to have another several thousand appeals to process here in a few weeks, few months, and that machine is going to break again and we're going to be stopped.
Well, that might be considered a capital request that could come back in a different spot, so we could take a look at that. Councilor Garrett.
Mr. Williams.
Sir.
How many appraisals can be handled per day by a single appraiser typically?
It all depends on what that appraiser is doing, but on average about 13, okay. 12, 13.
And I know we're talking about we've got to find revenue to cover this, but do you think you could predict any type of estimate? Do you think we're losing tax revenue because of the understaffing?
I think you're losing compliance with state code.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Now, how that impacts the tax digest over the years, it would impact it greater than it would on a one-year snapshot trying to take a look at that. But I do think that the historic issues that were uncovered last year is due to that understaffing.
Sure.
And it's been identified like that for 10 years.
Sure. I definitely, I mean, I know everybody was very concerned when everything came back, but the only way to prevent that from happening again is if we properly staff. But as the budget chairman said, we've got to find a way to pay for it, and everybody's going to be having these requests, but we'll see what we can do.
And council does have the option of, I believe one of the councilors requested a complete breakdown of all additional staffing requested. It's already in the budget. Council has the option of taking a budgeted amount that's already there and reallocating it to another department. You know, it's a tough call to make, but that's there. It's my understanding as of yet, the printer is not in the budget. Is that correct too?
Yes.
That would be a capital request, I guess.
Well, it's actually not the printer itself. We have a contract with RICO to supply the printers to the city. It would be the monthly lease fee, the operating cost for the printer that he's requesting.
So what's it being paid for now?
So currently, in the tax assessor's budget for for copier costs, they have a budget of $1,675. Hang on. In FY17, out of that budget, they spent $837. So what John is saying is, because of them getting a new copier, the cost per month to lease that copier goes up. And he's saying that the lease cost for the year is $2,250. So in that particular line item, he only has budgeted $1,675. So I'm assuming he's requesting the difference to be added to his budget.
When you add those two lines together, it's about $3,900.
And there's a per-page cost that he would pay as well. I think color copies cost a little bit more than black and white copies. Is that in the 2,200?
5 cents and then .006 for black and white.
Is that in the 2,200 that you're requesting, or is that in addition to?
No, the 2,200 is just
the
the
monthly
lease
okay.
payment. But the price per printed page is taken into account on that, what is already budgeted. Yeah. Those are those costs.
So you only need the 2,200?
Well, it'd be about $1,000, I would imagine, for the increased cost in the monthly fee for the copier, as well as the per page cost. I mean,
when I added what's in my budget already, $1,675 plus the $2,248, which is the monthly cost, on an annual basis, that's $3,900 rounded.
So just to say this.
Yes.
My assumption is that you didn't request it at the time of the budget.
I did not know that I had to request the monthly lease payment.
And had he requested it, certainly we would have added $1,000, you know, or whatever. Yes. What did you just say?
you said you estimate about $3,900.
$3,900.
Which would include the lease.
I'm adding the lease payment on an annual.
And the copy charges.
And the copying charges.
Got it.
Historically.
All right. So that is a difference of what's in his budget of $2,225.
That's what we need to put in.
That's what he wants to request in the budget.
Put it on there.
So who's putting it on the add delete list? Got it.
Yeah, Councilor Woodson. Got that. But but going forward, that would be an annual cost, right?
Yes, sir.
That should
So-
be in the budget next year.
City manager, you'll
I
need
just
to.
wanted you to know, obviously, he has to
He'll take care
have
of
it.
that.
And had he had it
I got
been in,
you.
we would have.
Right.
So,
But who's paying for it now?
Nobody
well,
knows.
Somebody.
he doesn't have the new machine yet, is what she's saying.
I do not.
Nobody.
Who's paying for the old machine?
He has the money in his budget for that. The $1,600 takes
And
care of that.
The lease
Oh, okay.
expires at the end of this coming June.
Okay.
Anything else, Ms. Woodson?
No, sir. That was it.
Anything
I was
else,
just
Ms.
trying to figure out what the
No, I was
dollar
trying to
amount
ask a question, Ms. Woodson just blamed me.
I'm sorry, baby. I was asking Bacon, and this comes in.
Don't ask me. Anything else, Mr.
No, sir.
Williams? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. Ms. Finance Director, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, next item on the agenda is Recorder's Court. We have Ms. Donna Willingham here, and she has a presentation.
So when I switch this, I'll turn to the next slide.
Yeah, just do that right there.
I'll just do that to next. Okay.
And then when this goes out, just tap it. 'Cause it goes.
Just tap this like here.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody get one? I think that's it. Okay, welcome, Ms. Willingham. Thank you for coming.
All right. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. Okay, I wanted to, the first item is part-time judges. When I originally came to the council, I was thinking that Saturday sessions were just one session, and I learned that it's actually 2 sessions that are combined. So we'll need additional $7,375 for Saturday sessions for part-time judges, because we combine the morning and afternoon session. Actually, they go back to back. So that's for the part-time judges. Also, in Recorder's Court, we have 6 positions in judicial and 6 positions in the financial that are undergraded. Columbus State, back in the beginning of March, we did the job reclassifications, and they were sent to Columbus State. And they all came back that they should be G12 positions. And I would like to have the positions changed to Deputy Clerk 2 to be the same as the other courts are, because their positions are state and judicial, state, municipal, and state courts all have Deputy Clerk 2 positions in their courts. These positions currently are G9 and G10 positions, but I would like to have them raised to G12 according to Columbus State's recommendation.
Ms. Willingham, as you go
Yes.
through your presentation, would you mention anything that you're requesting that is or is not in the budget, so we'll know
Okay.
if some of these issues are already in the budget and you're just giving information to us, or if they're requests for additional amounts? So
These are all requests for additional amounts. When I submitted my budget, they were in the budget that I submitted, but they were not in the mayor's budget. Okay, so they're all additional. As far as judicial and financial supervisors, we have 1 supervisor over the judicial department, 1 supervisor over the financial department. Both of those positions are undergraded. Columbus State has also reviewed and concurs that the supervisor position should be G14s and should be changed to senior deputy clerk positions. Right now, one of the supervisors is at a G10 level, who there is also other people that she's supervising that are also at G10 levels as well. And so I'm requesting that they both be raised to G14s. Then here's a breakdown of everything. There's 5 judicial administrative tech ones that are at 9A positions, and I'm requesting that they be changed to Deputy Clerk 2 positions at 12A to be equivalent with other courts. There's 1 judicial administrative tech 2 position that's a 10A that I would like to be changed to Deputy Clerk 2 to a 12A. There are 3 judicial administrative tech 2 positions at 10B, and again, I would like to have them changed to 12A. And then there's 1 judicial administrative tech 2 who's at a 10F position, and I would like to have her changed to a 12C. Then we also have 1 accounting clerk at a 10A, 1 accounting clerk at a 10B, and I would also like to have them changed to Deputy Clerk 2s to a 12A position. There's no difference in the job description between an accounting clerk and a judicial tech too. It's the same job description. So I would like to have them all at the same job title as well. Okay. Then as far as the supervisors go, I have one supervisor at a 10L, one supervisor at a 12A, and I would like for the 10L position to be changed to a 14E and the 12A position changed to a 14A. And then I would like to have their titles changed instead of Judicial Tech 2 and Judicial Tech 3 as the Senior Deputy Clerks of Recorder's Court. So the money involved would be $45,100 in the general fund, and that also includes benefits. In the OLOST fund, it would be $8,640, and that also includes benefits. So the total I'm asking for on the clerks is $53,740. In 2012, both state and municipal court positions were upgraded to a grade 12. Okay, and it's 2018 now, so that was like 6 years ago. In 2006 was the last time job classifications had been changed in Recorder's Court. The Judicial Administrative Tech originally was in the Sheriff's Office. In 2006, Recorder's Court became its own department. That is when the Judicial Administrative Tech 3 became a G12 position. We're doing 19 to 20 dockets per week, and just in Motor Squad, when we started that as a trial basis, we were doing 58 charges a week, and now we've gone up to as many as 589 charges. And that's on just in 2 courts on Tuesday. So I just want to thank you for your consideration in doing this, and are there any questions?
So any questions? I have one. Councilor Thomas, did the Recorder's Court Committee involved in any of this? Or
we were not involved in the actual numbers, but we have been aware of this discrepancy, if you will, in the positions. Donna pulled all of this together. So, and she did share with us this proposal, but these are her recommendations.
Okay.
I don't know if my fellow committee folks, but these are her recommendations. We were aware of the need, and we were aware that these have been to Columbus State.
Yes.
Thank you.
Excuse me. As far as the numbers go, I got with Angelica, and she's the one that ended up giving me the numbers as far as what numbers that I need to request. So she has figured all that out.
So what Donna is requesting is to basically restructure and reclassify the judicial admin clerks in Recorder's Court so that they're reclassified to deputy clerks. Council is correct. CSU has evaluated these positions. And one thing I would like to say is, when departments submit their requests for reclassifications to CSU or UGA for some in the past, they're not always, the reviewing party doesn't always agree. As a matter of fact, Recorder's Court was one of those departments last year based on the job description that was submitted, where UGA came back and said, no, we don't agree with what you're trying to, how you're trying to grade these positions. And one of the things that Donna did when she came in was looked at the positions, looked at the job descriptions, and revised the job descriptions based on what the people in the court were actually doing, and submitted those to CSU. And this year, they did agree with reclassifying those positions. So I just wanted to make mention that we have departments, and this happens across the government, where they may submit a request and present a job description to CSU or UGA, who we've used in the past, and they don't always recommend reclassification. So we have some other departments I know today that will be coming requesting reclassifications based on that were recommended. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Councilor Huff?
I was trying to get an understanding on the recommended increases here. The $45,100 in general fund will include, what's included in that?
That's included salary and all the benefits that go with it.
Okay, so the $53,740.
Right, it's the total.
Covers it?
Pardon?
It covers everything you requested?
It covers everything I requested in all the clerk's positions, yes.
Okay.
The part-time judges is a totally different category.
Okay. Mr. Budget Chair.
Yes, sir.
How do we look as far as these numbers being included coming out of OLOS and general fund?
Well,
I'm sorry, what was the question?
as far as the OLOS, Councilor Huff would like some clarification on the request out of the OLOS fund. I'm assuming that's that's some type of public safety or judge issue there?
It would be the public safety OLOS funds that she would be requesting the $886.40 from. And Recorder's Court has two approved positions that are currently funded out of OLOS. So this is to reclassify those two positions.
Okay, so to add this back, we okay as far as the money's being there?
Well, I mean, at this point, without an offset, as far as revenue, this would be fund balance, or if council decided to make some other adjustments within the budget.
Oh, you could make this happen?
It would come out of fund balance.
Okay,
at
I'm
this
saying
point.
I wanted to add it back. Add this needs to go on the add delete list?
Yes, you can, if you'd like to proceed forward with the reclassifications for Recorder's Court, you would need to add to the general fund, and I'm assuming you'd like to do the $73.75 for the part-time judges, because that money is needed as well. So within the general fund for Recorder's Court, to fund the part-time judges, the amount needed for the part-time judges, as well as all the reclassifications, that would be $52,475 from the general fund. And from the OLOS fund, that would be $8,640. So.
But your question, Councilor, as of yet, no, this is not have been added to the add list yet. This is not included.
It's not currently included.
Okay, and does this fall under the parameters of what we talked about earlier, of salaries and things coming out of?
Well, yes, if this was put in, then you're adding this to next year's budget as well, because those salary reclass increases would carry forward into the next budget as well. So yeah, it's a permanent hit as far as funding goes. If I understand your question.
Yeah, I'm just asking for a little help here. See,
it's not a new position as the assessors were.
Okay.
So you're not trying to establish and fund a new position.
Okay.
But it would be a fund balance hit for.
Okay. So do I need to add it separately or together? The $52,475 includes what?
You probably should do it separately, just in case other counselors want to vote on those items independently.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So I got you. Are you adding?
I'd like to add them back, yeah, separately.
Okay.
And if you would clarify those as judges, the judge piece, then the reclass pieces, and then the
yes. So
loss piece.
Okay. So what's being added to the general fund add delete list would be $7,375 for the part-time judges' wages, and then $45,100 for the reclassifications for the judicial admin technicians, accounting clerks, all to deputy clerks, and $8,640 in the OLOS fund add delete list for 2 reclassifications as well.
Okay. I'd like to put that on the ad list, please.
Anything else, Councilor Huff?
I'm good, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to ask the administration, when we could get reclasses done, if they come back that they should be increased, we don't do anything with it?
We do, and of course, it's always about funding, but I believe the others that have come back that you'll see coming forward were included in the budget if it came back from CSU, indicating that the position should be reclassified. It's not that we're not paying what we should be paying. I think in this case, it may have come back after the budget had already come in, I believe. I'm not, yeah, she says they did. But it was after the budget had already come to you that we got this back from CSU, and that's why she's now bringing it forward. So we do, obviously, if it comes back and they say it should be a deputy clerk 2 and we're at a 1, then we're not paying that person based on what they're doing, and we're not paying them fairly, and we need to make the adjustment. And we try and include that in the mayor's budget when that happens. So adding it to the ad list would be the appropriate thing to do.
Councilor Allen, were you finished? I'm sorry. Councilor Allen.
Thank you, sir. Two-part question. How are we on the revenues and expenses overall for the Recorder's Court? And on the positions, are one of these positions basically your assistant or deputy or something like that? Or
actually,
let me just ask that question.
2 positions are, one of them is the supervisor over the financial. The other supervisor is supervisor over the judicial section. So 2 of the positions are the supervisors.
Okay. I'm not sure what page this is, but the page, recommended changes.
It's on the 3rd page of the recommended changes, to change them to senior deputy clerks. One is a judicial administrative tech 2 at 10-11 grade. One is a judicial administrative tech 3 at a 12A grade right now. It's, here, let me see.
Is that where the 10L is?
This one right here.
And the 12A?
Right, the 10L and 12A. Those are the 2 supervisors. These 2 positions were recommended by Columbus State University to be changed to senior deputy clerks.
What I would like to do is see if there's some way that Recorder's Court can carry itself without us having to subsidize.
Okay.
That's why I was asking where are we on the revenue and expense side of it?
Well, from a budget perspective, if you go back to 2 budget years, the revenue that we're collecting now is it's down about $400,000 from where we were about 2 years ago. But I will say, based on March's financial report, for the Recorder's Court fines that we collected through the end of March, that particular line item, revenue line item, is up compared to 2017. It is up 3.8%. 0.11%. So we're up in that line item when we're comparing it to last year. Now, over the course of time, it's obviously down from where we're used to seeing it. But compared to 17, it's up.
Okay. Has any thought been given to talking with the employees about some sort of phase-in on this? Because some of these salary increases are pretty extravagant. I mean, it's, one of them's $4,000, and, you know, that's going to be not a very good morale boost for the other employees.
Well, it was really difficult in looking at everything. What I was trying to do is I was comparing recorder's court to state court, to municipal court, to superior court, but especially to municipal court. And the pay grades that those three courts had compared to our court was very, very, very low. All of those other courts have G12 and higher positions. The minimum they have is G12. Our court has G9 positions. And so what I was trying to do is raise everybody up to the levels of the other courts. And I'm talking about the minimum level. In other words, those courts might have 12C, 12D, but I was just trying to raise them at least up to a 12A position.
Well, and it's, let me make one very important point, is that it's not what Donna is moving these people to. These job descriptions have been sent off to CSU. They have evaluated the job description and determined, based on the job description provided, that that job needed to be classified at a G12 or G14 level. So it's not necessarily that Donna is requesting that these be moved. The job descriptions that these employees are performing was evaluated by CSU, and they determined that they should be reclassified. As far as the movement out on the scale, that is within our personnel policy. You know, as the city manager mentioned last week, if your job is being reclassified from one grade to the next, depending on where you already are on the scale, determines where you go out on the scale under the new classification. So it's not as if these people are they're just arbitrarily moving to a particular grade. It's based on our personnel policy.
Which and the personnel policy is obviously an ordinance. It's the law, and we've treated everybody else with that personnel policy. And so I think that's where your rub would come, because every time a person is reclassified or promoted, we apply the personnel policy that you adopted in 2006 for that. And so then to say to some, we want to graduate you there, could be a problem. So.
Well, I understand the evaluation process. The funding of what they recommend is our problem.
Sure.
And that's where we are now. I mean, it's you know, either you have it or you don't. And the phase-in opportunity to me would be a better approach for council at this time.
Yeah.
But that's.
And my thing is, you know, it's kind of like a pay plan. You know, if we're not going to fund it, we probably shouldn't go out and do a pay study, because then it's going to say someone should be making something that we can't do. And if we are not going to reclassify them, we probably ought not pay CSU or UGA to evaluate it, because when it comes back, then we've got to share that information with the department and the employee, and then they know that they are working, they've been working all these years, but we didn't know that they were not being paid appropriately, fairly. But when we know, because we ask and we paid for the study when we ask, now we know. But it's council's decision. I just share that with you.
Councilor Adams, finish?
I would put on the add delete list that we begin a phase-in process with this, the employees as recommended by the deputy, and we can talk about where we start at that phase in at a different time. Let me just say, Don, I agree with you. They need to be compensated. They do work hard. It's just, you know, where we are budgetarily at this time.
Why don't you, and why don't
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm sorry.
Judy, would you want you and Pop and I to get together and talk about?
I would like for us to get together.
Maybe recommend something.
I think we should just get together and discuss it, how we're going to phase it in. That's what I would like.
Okay.
It's on the list.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just how
we're going, right.
How will we do it? We may be able to come back with some recommendations. Does that work?
So
let's check with the finance director. What do you have?
Well, currently on the list, I have the reclassifications at full value, which is what Councilor Huff requested to be put on the list. So now, when it comes time to vote on the add delete list, which is May 22nd, if council has another recommendation, we can make a change to what's on the list.
It may be that we come back with a phase in. It may be that we say, we've got some more information and, you know, we do it this way or that way, but we'll come back with some recommendations.
That's fine. It's on but for disclosure purposes, it's on the list. It's been added.
It's been added at full value based on the reclassifications per Councilor Huff.
Thank you.
45.
Mayor Pro Tem?
And if I can give my 2 cents worth to the community, let these employees be treated right. They've been mistreated already. We don't need to continue to do it. They should have been upgraded a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think that's all, Ms. Willingham. Thank you.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have for the Public Defender's Office, and we have Mr. Moffitt and Mr. Kraft here to present.
Good afternoon. That's always a good start. We're here with one request today, the addition of one attorney in Recorder's Court. Even though our proposed budget to the mayor included some increases in our daily operating expenses, those were not included in the proposed budget that you have before you, and we will continue to make do with what we've done in the past, and we're not going to ask for an increase in that. However, the staffing issue in Recorder's Court is not that simple. When we were asked to come before you a little over a year ago to address the fact that the city was facing 2 federal lawsuits and the threat of a 3rd lawsuit, we were very frank and candid with this council, with the attorneys involved on both sides of the lawsuit and the administration about what was necessary to address the issues facing that court. We presented a detailed analysis and recommendations based on the caseloads and the legal requirements to provide adequate representation. At that point, we told you that you would need 2.5 attorneys and an investigator. For budgetary purposes, we said we would start with 2 attorneys and the investigator. We pulled our senior attorney out of the Superior Court rotation as a 3rd attorney in that court to establish the program, get everything in place, and get that program moving. We then pulled that attorney back into the regular rotation in Superior Court and told you we would come back to you when we needed that half attorney as an actual 3rd full attorney. And so that's why we're here. The caseload for us in that court started at about 272 cases a month for those 2 attorneys, and now it's almost 370 cases a month. That's a 36% increase. In addition to that, as the clerk mentioned a little while ago, today as we speak, they're over there with an 18-page docket, some 200-plus cases in a separate courtroom with a second judge holding court in addition to the court that we agreed to handle. So now we have an additional court and a significant increase in the caseload occurring. And while we're discussing this, that courtroom is packed with citizens with traffic tickets, a couple of dozen police officers, a second judge, and one of our Superior Court attorneys that we pulled over to cover that today because the other two attorneys have to tend to the regular court duties that Judge Hunter's holding for preliminary hearings and the other matters that routinely appear on that docket. In the interim, to address those demands, we created a rotation where we pulled some of our Superior Court attorneys over and one of our Superior Court investigators to cover some of the additional workload in that additional court session. However, two factors are going to prevent us from doing that going forward. One is that the outlying counties that we service, where we've been pulling some of those attorneys, their peak court time starts in the spring. So they've had a little downtime, but now they're getting back to their required Superior Court duties, and they have to move forward with those. And another is, unfortunately, we're losing one of our senior attorneys, and we're going to lose a great deal of experience with that, so we're going to have to use the remaining attorneys to cover his caseload until we hire a replacement. A member of this council's firm stole away one of our good lawyers last year, and so now we're looking at replacing another attorney. And unfortunately, that means that we can't provide those resources that are funded and dedicated to Superior Court to Recorder's Court, which is a separate issue and not part of our state mandate and part of our state funding. And we share when we can. One of the things that I need to point out is that we have to, well, first off, our attorneys are exempt employees. They don't get overtime and comp time. And even if we gave them comp time, I don't have the resources to give them the time off if they ask to use it. When you have two people in there doing the work of three people, one of them can't take off. I mean, that's the simple reality. So unless I have somebody available from the Superior Court side that I can slip over there for the afternoon or that morning session so they can run to the doctor or whatever, we can't not have them in court. The attorneys have to be there at 7 in the morning for the 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock court session. They have to be there at 1 o'clock for the 2 o'clock court session. If the 8 and 9 o'clock court session runs long, that runs into lunch, means they don't eat lunch. They just go from the morning session to back to the holding cell where the sheriff has the people down for the afternoon session and starts talking to those people. So, and then if the afternoon session lasts long because of the pushover, then they're late into the evening. So that puts a tremendous strain, and the reality is we compete with 49 other public defenders' offices in the state for qualified lawyers. Burnout is a reality. We've already replaced one attorney in that court who made it 3 months. And it is driven by the time demands and the stresses of the caseloads. To address the overtime issue, we are, and the fact that we're not going to have some of that coverage, we are creating a rotation. And what that's going to do is it's going to short the court one of those attorneys for at least one session to allow that attorney not to get into that 55, 60-hour unpaid work week. So we're trying to structure that around the least demanding times for the court so that it has minimal impact. But the simple truth is it will impact the court process and the time frame in which those cases move. That domino effect is that it then impacts the sheriff's office and the clerk's office as well. We are committed to making this program work. We have been since you asked us to come to you a little over a year ago, and we have tried to pull as many resources in as we can to make this happen. But the simple reality is we have to make some changes. In our initial budget request, we asked for the addition of a mid-level attorney. That was a salary of $53,000 with benefits and the administrative surcharge. I believe that came out to about $92,000. In recognition of the fact that there are some budget constraints and we're not greedy, we try very hard to manage your money, we would propose an entry-level position. The salary for that would be $47,500. The benefits and I included the surcharge in the total, would be $82,757. That covers all the personnel costs associated with the salary. I believe that our office, is a good steward of the city's money and the taxpayers' money. Over the last 4 years, we have obtained around $400,000 in refunds from the state to include a $166,000 refund for the last fiscal year. Now, I expect at the end of this fiscal year we'll get the city back a little more money, but it's way too early for me to be able to tell you what that is. through some staffing and state cost-sharing changes, our general fund budget increase, as in your proposed budget right now, is 1%. Well, 1.09% increase to be exact. So we try and toe the line in the budget process. Our proposal, by bringing in an entry-level position to this, Robin King is here with my boss, Mr. Flournoy, today. She is our lead senior attorney, and we propose to bring her over to Recorder's Court and move one of the Recorder's Court's attorney over into Superior Court. Because we have more attorneys in Superior Court, we can factor in a slightly less experienced attorney over there. By bringing in the most senior attorney we have besides Moffitt and I, she can manage a younger attorney and some of the complications in that court. And let me tell you, you're getting way more than you're paying for in the funding for Recorder's Court by us putting her over there, all right? And you're getting more bang for your buck than we've ever asked for in the past. But I think it's appropriate, and as we explained during the executive session about staffing and they're all being state attorneys, we have the flexibility to address this issue by bringing her into that court with one of the existing attorneys that's over there and this new entry-level person. That'll allow us to address the 36% increase in the caseloads and this additional court day. After we agreed to come in and we met with y'all and the new judges come in over there, they have added a session, a separate day of court in the second courtroom with a second judge and all the trimmings that go with that. Well, we don't have an extra attorney to put over there, but we are obligated to find a way to cover those cases. Without the ability to rotate in the Superior Court attorneys, what's going to happen is we're going to cover our obligation in the primary court, and when one of those attorneys is finished, he can go over to that other court. But you can imagine if there's 240 cases sitting over there, that no matter how they process that, our coming in there after court starts is going to delay that to some degree. And it's unfair to the attorney and to the client to some degree. The time constraints that we have in that court are already difficult to manage, and the amount of time that I get to speak to my client, because it is a preliminary hearing, it is a lower level process, but I still need to have that time, and before somebody says, well, that's just traffic court on the other side, there are a lot of traffic offenses that will suspend your driver's license, and for some people that means they're losing their job, and some of those offenses also carry jail time. So the attorneys still have a duty to represent those people. Recorder's Court has made significant improvements over the last year, and we would like to see that continue. We don't want it to revert to the stepchild problems and encounter some of the issues we had in years past. A lot of progress has been made over there. We've got a new judge, we've got a new clerk, we're involved in the program, and everybody is working to make this work. So we're going to ask that you put that position back on the ad list so that we can get that support in that court.
Councilor Woodson?
Yes. Can you put in that position for the 82,757, please?
It would actually be 82,721,
Okay.
but I got it.
I'm correct. That's fine. I don't mind being corrected. I heard differently, but just go ahead. Just put that position in, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Did you not mention an entry-level
That's an
alternative?
entry. That's the
That's the entry level, that's salary
alternative.
benefits, total cost to the state
Yeah,
for that
that's the
position.
entry level. The other one was 92,000.
It's roughly $10,000 less than we put in our original budget request.
You got it? Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilor Thomas?
Mr. Kraft, do you, can you tell me why those cases have gone up 36%?
Why, I'm sorry.
Why, you said the number of cases has gone up by about 36%?
My best guess is two things. The police chief is under pressure to do something about the perception of crime in his community, and as a result of that, his officers are under the same pressure to act, which means there are going to be a lot more arrests for offenses that might not have always generated the same level of attention. And I'd be willing to bet everyone here lunch that as you feel more and more of those vacancies in the police department and that 70, 80 number comes down to 30 or 40, that the arrest rates will go up even more. and a focus by law enforcement, for whatever reason, will always result in more arrests. And as we've seen on this Tuesday traffic session, the department is committed, specifically their motor squad, is committed to an enhanced traffic safety enforcement program. The reality is in Columbus, you stand a better chance of getting killed by a stranger in a car wreck than you do of being murdered. And the department takes that seriously, which means more distracted driving tickets, more checkpoints, more license violations, and some of those end up in arrest, because once you have that initial encounter for a traffic situation and they pull you out of the car and you have a suspended license and they search the car, they find some minimal amount of drugs, even just, a residual amount, now you have a felony charge on top of your traffic. So one compounds the other. And as long as there's an emphasis on that, you're going to see those numbers increase.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Did the governor sign or veto the bill yet about the hands-free driving? So it's going to get worse in traffic court. Because I don't think a lot of people are aware of that bill.
Yes, it's my understanding that that bill has been signed.
Okay.
City Manager, any response? Was this discussed during the budget process on your end, on the administration's end, this extra position?
On the added position?
Yes, sir.
The finance director has reminded me it was part of their request. It just didn't make it into the mayor's budget. We don't object to it. We just wanted to figure out how to pay for it.
Okay, thank you.
It's kind of like, how can you have a program if you don't have a lawyer?
Say that again?
How can you have a program if you don't have sufficient attorneys?
Yes, I agree.
Anything else? I think that's all, Mr. Kraft. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Next department on the agenda, is planning, and I believe Director Rick Jones is here. Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate your time this afternoon. I have I hope it's a simple request. I'm looking at trying to take care and make sure that we have the classification right for what is now known as my administrative secretary. She's at a G10 position. I'd like to move her position up to an administrative assistant. That may sound like semantics here, what we're playing, but what classified as being an administrative secretary is much different than that of an administrative assistant. The administrative secretary, in my mind, my definition is pretty much answering the phone, doing some filing, things of that nature. The administrative assistant actually does more of that in terms of actually paying invoices, keeping meetings, things of that nature that we look at from that. The amount we're looking at bumping up is $3,493. That's salary with benefits. And this would come out of the transportation planning federal funds we receive now for that. So it would not come out of the general funds. It actually come out of the funds we set aside for the grant we receive administratively to run the MPO and other operations. So that's my request, Mr. Chairman.
Was this something that needed to be run to CSU?
It has, and CSU has come back affirming that position needs to be moved to that classification.
Okay. And so if there's no budget impact, why wasn't this already done?
Well, it's an 80-20 funded position, so of the $3,507, 2,806 would be grant funded, that's the 80%, and $701 would be the 20% local funding. And so I do support it.
That's an ad list.
Yeah.
I do support it.
Okay.
And it's budgeted for, it's in the budget. The local match is in the budget.
The local match is already in the budget.
Yes.
So we should be good on this one?
Yes, $701.
I mean, would that be an additional budget impact, or that's what's already in?
No, it's not an additional budget impact.
So you just needed approval for what, the match? I mean, for the federal piece?
It's not in, it's not in the budget, it needs to get in. It was not in the budget when submitted.
But that's the piece that there's a match for.
Well, if the match is
Clarify what
already
you,
there.
yeah, clarify what we're asking for,
Right.
please.
Within the general fund budget, we set aside a certain amount of monies to cover all the matches that we have to do for all the grant-funded programs. And the match so the local match money is already in the budget, in the general fund budget. So if this position was reclassified and that, and there was an increase, and there's that, the increase is approved for 3507, the match itself is already covered within the amount of monies that we budget already to cover local matches.
So let me just say, what we're asking you to do is just to reclassify the position from administrative secretary to administrative assistant with no budget impact.
Okay, put it on there.
And then go from a 10 to a 12. There is no financial impact because it's already there.
We got on the list.
We got it.
So,
Okay.
who added,
Zeros I can do. Okay, with zero we can do, okay.
who added it? Pew.
Yeah, the reclass is on the add delete list with no budget impact, no dollars. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Everybody else, we need a lot of, Madam Sheriff, I think you're up.
I don't think not yet. Mm-mm. That's just in case. Yep, and so the next department on the agenda is the Sheriff's Office. We have Sheriff Donald Tompkins here. Do you have anything you want to pass?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope not to take too much of your time this afternoon. I am here, of course, to answer any questions, and the only thing that I'm aware of that's on this agenda for council's approval is I have two positions that I would like to see a pay increase for. One is for Commander Larry Mitchell in the jail, which should be a 2.5% pay raise. I believe that's around $2,000. And one is for my chief deputy, Troy Culpepper, which is $5,099. That money should have zero budget impact because Deputy Chief John Fitzpatrick retired, and I believe the cost savings on that is somewhere around $44,000 from his salary. So this will have no budget impact to increase the salary of these two. Then I did ask the administration to do one other thing for me, because the second step of our pay reform was included in the administration's budget for us, of which I'm thankful for. But as we looked at that, one of the things that I wanted to go ahead and address, if possible, in this budget is to move that second step, which would be our corporals, our investigators, grade 14. And since I have 35 positions vacant today, I would more than willingly leave one of those vacant to cover this. The administration, Ms. Alexander and all, shows that I'd be about $7,000 short. However, I'm saving $44,000 from the retirement of Chief Fitzpatrick. So I see all of these as being budget neutral, but I need council's approval to move forward with those things.
Well,
did I miss anything, Ms. Angelica?
Sheriff, my first question would be, what about the replacement of Fitzpatrick?
No, sir, he will not be replaced. His position will fall back to a deputy's position. And so, of course, his salary as a chief was much higher than what a deputy's salary would be. And I believe what was provided to me was approximately $44,000. It was the difference in what a chief would make and what a deputy would make.
So you're willing to forgo that and drop those down for other uses?
Correct. I don't intend to replace him or his position. I would just replace the deputy if I were able to. So there's a considerable salary savings, and I believe that I can take care of all of the rest of these pay raises, and it sort of realigns things a little better with his retirement. My chief has more responsibility, and obviously my jail commander will have more responsibility.
I'm unclear as to exactly what we're talking about. I'm sorry, I was passing around your handouts when you first started speaking. So, but what is included in the mayor's recommended budget is the reclassification, taking the major's position, reverting that back to a deputy sheriff position, which is from a grade 22 to a grade 14. There is a budget reduction because of that change. And so included in the mayor's budget is a reclassification of a major to jail commander, and the reclassification of the chief deputy sheriff from a grade 24F to a grade 24H. That's already in the recommended budget.
It is. All those things are in the mayor's recommended budget. I just understood that I had to come to council to make sure that that was approved.
And we thank you for doing that.
And then I did want to present the second part of addressing pay for corporals, investigators, FTOs, because with the pay reform, the compression just gets worse. And the reason that I wanted to attempt to do this now, and again, it won't cost any more money, is as it moves on, it'll just get worse if we don't address it right now. And I will have, my staff and I will have accomplished pay reform for all but approximately 50 of our employees. And I just want to thank the city and the administration for that. And, you know, we hope to move forward next year with more. But right now, all of these are budget neutral as I see them. And I would like your approval on those things.
Councilor Woodson?
I just want to make sure we're clear, because Angelica said it was already in the budget.
Yes, ma'am. It was there in the proposed budget from the mayor.
Because she's kind of busy.
I didn't want to, I hate to interrupt, I just want to make clear, you know, this is a legislative decision, obviously, so I'm not weighing in one way, good or bad, but I would say I would contest that the pay reform makes compression worse. And the only reason I say that is not to lock horns with you, Sheriff, but we have that discussion a lot, as you can imagine. But the pay reform actually steps things at $1,000, $1,300, $1,500 based on longevity. So particularly over the years, it begins to pull you away. So that's the only point I wanted to make, because you probably weren't here for the 3-hour conversation earlier, but we talked a little bit about that, and I just don't want there to be a misimpression. So anyway, you may have been talking about another aspect of it.
I was talking about a separate aspect.
Yeah,
that's wonderful that we have the milestone increases.
Right.
That will make it less compression over the years.
Particularly over time.
I just see a way to address pay for all but 50 of our employees, and I think that considering that I have 35 job openings, I think keeping great employees is huge, and to provide them an incentive. These are your 5 and 7 and 10-year employees that we desperately need to keep. And I personally just, again, if I can give up one position and not fill it and provide for 37 people an additional amount of money, I see that as a win.
Angelica, do we need to do anything since it's kind of balancing itself out?
Well, you would need to do something as far as this handout that the sheriff passed around. This proposal.
No, I'm saying prior to this handout.
Prior to that, no.
We don't have to do anything.
No.
Okay, it's all
She just had reclassifications that were in the budget, and council requested that all departments come and talk about those reclassifications. So that's what she was doing prior to the handout.
Now this handout, just so I'm clear, okay, so I'm clear on the other one, she's fine there.
I'm good there.
On this handout, this will be an additional cost, or this will also be cost neutral? Thank you. I lost my thought there.
Well, I think what the sheriff is proposing, and I'll have to come back to you with the particulars as far as the numbers, but what I think she is proposing is to move her investigative positions, her grade 16 positions, to give those folks a 2.5% increase, which, and I think her strategy for funding that increase is to fund but not fill
correct
a deputy sheriff position.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the difference in the cost of that is about $7,000, but we saved $44,000 with the retirement of a deputy chief. So the money, as far as paying salaries, it should more than be there. I will gladly not fill one position. I have 35. It's not a problem to not fill one.
Right. Well, the change for that position is already wrapped into the budget, so there's no additional savings from that. So we use that money to supply the other reclassifications, and then, so that money is, we don't have any additional savings from that major reclassification down to the deputy sheriff. So we
say that again, or say it louder.
I don't understand that. It should have been about $7,000. And my understanding was that the savings was $44,000. So when we did the reclasses,
that money was redistributed within the sheriff's budget.
Oh, I got you.
Yes.
Okay, well.
So
$7,000.
I'll come back with firm numbers.
Okay.
It says it, but I'm seeing some calculations on here that are not correct. So if you give me just a moment.
I did ask Ms. Alexander and Ms. Hollowell to give me those numbers. That is where I got them from when I came up with the idea of let's try to do this now. And I asked advice, do I do it now? Is this the time? And they said, yes, do it during the budget process. Go ahead and bring it forward to.
Well, Sheriff, since there's a couple of questions, I mean, it isn't like we're not going to consider it. I would like to give Angelica time to look at it to make sure that the numbers are correct, because I don't see any concerns around here in reference to it if it's cost neutral or very little cost. And so I would ask that we give Angelica a little time to look at it, because we can add it to the list at any time. It doesn't have to be right now, today, this second. Right. So we just say, Angelica, just look at it and then come back to us and let us know if it's cost neutral or is there a small dollar amount for this proposal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate that.
But, yeah, I think you should go ahead and add it to the list and with that number, but
knowing that it could change.
Correct the number or form it up, yes.
Okay, so put it on.
You have that request? Mayor, let me ask you a quick question. I know in the budget you said you had used a fixed amount that had been set aside to help the sheriff implement one of her pay pieces, I believe.
Right. What happens next year? Right. Then the money will, as I recall, Councilor Baker, that came from the sheriff agreeing to liquidate some positions, and we set it aside, positions that could not be filled. And so as long as those positions go unfilled, that money should be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure there's a clear understanding so we don't get sideways of those.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, it wasn't operational money, and I certainly Angelica can check it. Pam was finance director at the time we did it. She may have a present recollection, but those were not operational monies. Those were personnel monies.
Okay.
So they would be reoccurring.
That's what I thought. Thank you very much. Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's not as painful as we all thought it might be.
No.
All right, so the next department on the agenda is the municipal court judge, and Judge Stephen Smith is here.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Did you bring copies?
They were given to the finance office to hand out, but if we need to hand out something, I've got these single sheets for them.
Okay. Awesome.
Y'all
Hey,
tired?
Judge, thanks for coming.
You bet. Y'all tired yet?
No, just getting warmed up.
All right, I will say the words that put fear in my heart when I hear them from lawyers. I'll be brief. This is a simple request, but it is an urgent request, and it's almost laughably small, but we're here asking for a part-time person to help us in magistrate court. It's confusing. I'm the only judge that is really two judges. I'm the magistrate judge and the municipal court judge. This has nothing to do with municipal court. This has only something to do with magistrate court. And this is our problem. I think y'all got a handout just now. You might have gotten one before, but the page that I want you to see is the one that has the years 2010 through really 2018 there and some numbers. That's the important one. We're asking for this part-time person because the number of cases filed in magistrate court has doubled since 2011. I started at the end of 2010, and from then until now, the cases filed have doubled from a little bit less than 3,500 to this year we're on a pace for over 7,000. We always had 4 clerks. Forever and a day, we've had 4 clerks. We're not asking for 4 more clerks because we got twice the work. We're asking for one 20-hour-a-week person at the lowest pay scale. I think it comes out to $12,000. It may be a little bit less. But we're asking for that. Why are we asking for that? Well, the number of cases have doubled. The good news is city revenue on the filing fees in magistrate court have doubled from 11 to now. 73,000 is what we got, the city part, in 2011, and in 18 it's projected to be over 150,000. So we need this person. Why do we need this person? Well, it is because our cases have taken off. That's why we have more cases, because more are being filed. Why are they being filed? Magistrate court offers an opportunity for lawyers to not have to go through discovery and a lot of the other stuff. They can get a trial really quickly. And so that makes us popular. Now, your everyday citizen isn't the reason that our business has doubled. The reason our business has doubled is because we have some very large Atlanta collection law firms and out-of-state collection law firms that are filing. When they file, they don't file 1 or 2 cases. Dozens and dozens, maybe a couple of hundred at a time comes in. Why? It's because the big credit card companies can't collect their debt. They sell their bad debt. People buy it for pennies on the dollar. Then they hire these big law firms to collect it for them, and it all ends up in our court. We can't keep going the way we've been doing now. We just can't handle the volume. I'm dating myself, but some of you may not admit it, but some of you remember this. You remember Lucy on the Lucy show when she's in the factory and the gumballs are coming and she's got to put them in a box? Well, that line is going so fast now, they're falling on the floor. We can't handle it. What will the 20-hour person do? She will be doing nothing but taking cases that we processed and filing them. That's all she'll be doing, and helping us open mail. The Superior Court gets the most mail in the city of Columbus. Guess who number 2 is? It's our court. So we're opening mail all day. So it is just a lot of volume, and we get more and more and more through the electronic in-court process as well. So,
I'm sorry, Councilor Huff, you probably get on the record for that.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I'll second Councilor Garrett and let him add it, since I've added one already.
Okay.
Okay. But we both want to add it back. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Do I need to say more? you know, as a lawyer, you got to know when to shut up, so I'm stopping.
Just stop. You good?
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. Really, really do. It'll help us.
Well,
Thank you.
It's, Judge, I mean, it's made the ad list, Judge, and not the, yeah, okay, thank you, not the final cut.
That was not nice of you. You got it, get off.
Okay, Finance Director.
All right, two more to go. So next on the list is our Community Reinvestment Director, Laura Johnson.
Good afternoon again. I'm going to make it brief as well. First, I just wanted to go over our allocations that we're supposed to be receiving this year real briefly. For community development block grant funding, it looks like we're going to be getting about $1.5 million. Home investment partnership program funding, about $672,000. We have some program income carryover funding in CDBG in the amount of about $545,000. Some home carryover in about $81,000, and then for our real estate, $141,000. For a total of about $2.8 million. So talk about our administrative portion a little bit. Our administrative for CDBG will be about $406,000, and what we'll be paying for administrative funds out of home is about $173,000. So currently we have 6 budgeted positions. 5 of those are full-time. 1 is a part-time clerical position, and this year we're asking for 1 additional position for fiscal year 19 to be our real estate technician. So that 1 position that we're asking for would be to assist the city with the disposition of city-owned properties, and it would be working with our Columbus Land Bank Authority to acquire, demolish, blighted, and tax delinquent properties and place them back into productive use. This position would be funded 100% utilizing the CDBG program income. It would be used, the grant funding that will be used with the land bank would be CDBG and NSP program income. So that's the funding that they would actually be using in conjunction with this 1 person to do acquisitions, demolitions, and dispositions. The funding for the land bank was approved by City Council for fiscal year 2018. And this position that we're requesting would be actually a temporary position for 2 fiscal years, with hopes that after year 2, the land bank would become self-sufficient and we would be able to transfer the position over to the land bank. So it would only be a city position for a period of 2 years.
No question.
Councilor Woodson?
Ms. Johnson, is this this land bank position you're talking, is that from that presentation we had where that person will focus completely on the properties that we have and disposition them?
Yes.
Oh, you can put this on the list now. And you can put this on the list right now.
It's in there. It's included.
It's included?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it, like I was saying, it would be 100% grant funded for the 2 years that we're trying to implement it.
Now, are either of these positions not in the budget, or?
This one is.
They're both in the budget?
Are you talking about 2 or just 1 position?
1 position.
Oh, and it's funded also by?
The grant funding.
By the grant, and it's in the budget?
Yes.
I love you both.
So you just came to announce an additional position?
That's correct. She was on the list of departments that received a position or reclassification.
That's right, requested a new position, so.
So this is for our dream to come true then, the land bank?
We hope so, yes.
Okay, yes.
And I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have to finish the presentation? Go ahead.
Right, and it
That's
has
fine.
no budget impact because it's already included, so.
And I think it was asked for a little explanation of what our funding is going to go towards this year, so I just did this presentation to kind of give you an overview to kind of see where we're looking at allocating some of the additional funding to as well. So for the community development block grant funding, we're looking at about $90,000 for demolition, $228,000 for public service grants. We're looking at trying to allocate some to some recreation projects, which would be like we could do some renovations to rec centers or parks in low-income census tracts, about $300,000. We're looking at trying to do some connectivity projects or sidewalks, maybe in some low-income neighborhoods, of about $200,000. We're still allocating funding towards the minor home repair program, an accessibility home modification program, where we'd be doing ADA modifications to homes of those who are disabled. We're looking at trying to do some additional property acquisitions, maybe in some of our redevelopment areas, and those would also most likely be like blighted properties. So we put about 176 in that. We have our mandated Section 3 job training program, which is something that HUD requires us to do. We put 20,000 in that, and then for the Land Bank Authority, the 414,000 in program income, and that's the money that they would actually use to do some of the property acquisitions, demolitions, and property dispositions. So we did our RFP for our public service grants for this year, and these are the applicants that submitted applications, and this is the recommended funding that each one of these organizations would be receiving. We have 2 new applicants this year, Arrangement Services and an organization, I was trying to find the other one. Oh, Parks and Recreation submitted a Midnight Basketball Program League, so we recommended 25,000 to that as well.
Good job.
For recreation, as I was saying, about 300 to that to try to do some renovations for some existing recreation centers or playgrounds, and the connectivity, 200,000. Minor home repair, this is a program that's currently existing this year. This is for an additional 150 next year, and we utilize Habitat for Humanity as our partner for that program. The accessibility program, 80,000 again. They're currently doing the program as we speak this year as well, and we work with Access to Independence for that program. Demolitions, of course, we work with inspections and codes. We were able to increase that a little bit to 90,000 for next year, and then our Section 3 program. So for our home program, we have the Affordable Home Housing Development. NeighborWorks submitted an application for some proposed redevelopment of homes in Anderson Village, the City Village in North Highlands area, which is one of their target areas right now. And they're also utilizing some of the funding to do a gap subsidy program, which will help low to moderate income residents become homeowners. And then some funding could be used for additional affordable housing projects in Columbus as well. Tenant-based rental assistance, that's a program that we provide rental assistance to those who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless, and Open Door Community House is our administrator of that program. And then, of course, the real estate, that's what we do in-house for city-owned properties. And so we have 50,000 for administration of that, and operations about 91,000. And that concludes my presentation. Anybody has questions?
Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Last department to present will be inspections and codes. Just waiting on Director Hutchinson.
That's the one we've been waiting on. Mr. Hudgens is on the shot clock.
All right, well, while we're waiting on him, our next budget review meeting will be May 15th. It'll be next Tuesday. This meeting starts at 9 a.m. It's scheduled from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. currently. And we have a lot of public safety departments and our larger departments on for that day, so bring a lunch.
Okay.
Is he not back there? Okay. Reschedule, John? Okay.
Councilor Thomas?
Oh, Ms. Alexander, excuse me, you said we're going 9 to 4 next week?
Yes,
and
ma'am.
have you built in a lunchtime?
You know, I probably know.
You didn't.
But I can.
Do you guys not realize we eat?
I can build in a lunchtime.
I think I know 10 councilors that can take care of that.
We're going to need a break. We can't do 9 to 4 without.
Okay.
Yeah, the city manager has to eat, so.
So I'll reschedule Director Hutchinson for next week, and then I'll build in a 30-minute Right, is that good enough? 30 minutes? 30. Is that good enough?
We just do need, I mean, because it's hard to get up and leave when somebody's making a presentation, and sometimes you just have to have a little break, so.
I agree. I agree, we'll take care of that.
So if you would put that in, I would appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am, we will take care of that.
And the TV's on back.
Oh, just didn't make it.
Where were you?
The bathroom?
Director Hutchinson.
Tell you he was probably.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
I'm coming forward with a... Okay. All right. This has been approved per the budget. This reclass is also budget neutral. It's been approved through CSU. The intent is we moved special enforcement coming over and the coordinator position or my middle management just to make everybody on the same playing field. And that's pretty much it. For the special enforcement supervisor to a special enforcement coordinator.
Right, Mr. Hutchinson is here because council requested to see all departments with the reclassification, and he has one reclassification that's already included in the budget. It is taking a special enforcement supervisor grade 15 to a special enforcement coordinator grade 17. So he was just explaining, based on the job description that was submitted to CSU, why he's taking it, why they agreed that it should be a 17.
Any questions for the director?
Yes, that's correct. Special enforcement, for budgetary purposes for FY19, moved from Public Works, General Fund Public Works to General Fund Inspections and Codes. So
we added one to John and deleted one.
There was actually 8 positions that transferred from Pat's, 7 positions, I'm sorry, that transferred from Pat's office to John's office.
And we're reclassifying their supervisor to be equal with my supervisors and currently in my department.
Any other questions? You good? Okay. So that's a non-budget impact item that.
That's correct. It's already included in the budget. So again, we have a special call meeting. Our next budget review session begins at 9 a.m. next Tuesday. I will revise the schedule and build in a bit of a break here. So
please do. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. And with that, thank everybody for the time and patience. With that, we're adjourned.